November 12, 1944. A ragged ceiling of bruised purple clouds hangs low over the Hürtgen forest, just inside the German border. Down below, the world is a sodden, unforgiving landscape of skeletal trees and churned mud, a place that swallows light and hope. At 8,000 feet, the air is thin and bitterly cold. It seeps through the flight suit of Captain Evan Preacher Miles, commander of Viper Flight, 357th Fighter Group. His gloved hands feel clumsy on the stick of his P-51 Mustang, callsign Viper Lead. The plexiglass canopy is beaded with condensation, each droplet a tiny, distorted lens, reflecting the monotonous gray. This was supposed to be a high-altitude escort mission, a routine run shepherding B-17s to an industrial target deep in the Reich, but the weather had turned on them. The bomber stream had been recalled, leaving the little friends to fend for themselves, prowling the lower altitudes for targets of opportunity. It was frustrating, dangerous work. Flying this low made you a target for every nervous German soldier with a machine gun. The sky was no longer a vast, open arena. It was a cramped corridor, walled by clouds above and unseen flak below. The constant hum of his Packard Merlin engine is the only thing that feels certain in this uncertain world. Viper Flight, check in? Miles's voice is a tired rasp over the radio, the words clipped by the hiss of static. Viper 2, with you? Viper 4, on your 6? A momentary pause, then a voice, calmer and quieter than the rest, cuts through. Viper 3, solid? That's Lieutenant Jack Riley, Racer Riley. Miles glances to his right, at the silver Mustang tucked in so tight its wingtip seems almost close enough to touch. He can't see Riley's face behind the oxygen mask and goggles, but he can picture it, the intense, unblinking focus, the hands that move on the controls with an unnerving economy of motion. Riley is the best stick-and-rudder man Miles has ever seen. He flies the Mustang like he was born in it. But he's also a maverick, a former air racer who carries the ghost of a pylon turn in every combat maneuver. He takes chances that veteran pilots flinch. They circle for another 10 minutes, the 4 Mustangs weaving through the gaps in the clouds like silver sharks hunting in murky water. Fuel gauges are starting to become a concern. The mission is a bust. Miles is about to call them home, to punch through the clouds and set a course for the relative safety of their base at Leiston, England. Frustration tastes like bile in his throat. All this way for nothing. Then Riley's voice comes over the radio again, still unnervingly calm, but with a new edge, a predator's focus. Lee, this is 3. I've got movement. 7 o'clock low, through the break. Miles banks his Mustang hard, dropping his left wing to follow Riley's gaze. For a second, all he sees is an endless carpet of dark green pine trees. Then the clouds part like a theater curtain, and he sees it. Snaking along a narrow asphalt road cut through a deep valley is a column of dark shapes. Trucks, a lot of them, moving fast. A German supply convoy. It's a jackpot. Fuel, ammunition, troops, the lifeblood of the Wehrmacht divisions fighting so fanatically in the forest below. His hunter's instinct screams, attack, but his commander's mind screams, trap. The convoy is nestled deep in the valley, shadowed by steep, wooded slopes. The cloud base is barely 1,000 feet above the road. A traditional high-angle strafing run is impossible. They'd be in the clouds before they could line up a shot. The only way to hit them is to go down into the valley itself, to fly at treetop level, where a single 20mm flat cannon hidden on the hillsides could turn their entire flight into a funeral pyre. And in a P-51, that's a death sentence. He knows it. Every pilot in the sky knows it. He's about to give the order to ignore it, to let it go. It's not worth the risk. But before he can speak, Riley is on the radio again, his voice no longer a suggestion, but a statement of intent. Lead, I'm going in.
Negative, Viper 3. Negative. That's a sucker's play. Captain Miles's voice is sharp, cutting through the radio chatter. He can already picture the German gun crews down there, nestled in the trees, just waiting for an arrogant American pilot to drop down into their kill box. Form up. We're heading for home. They're exposed, Lead. Riley's voice comes back, impossibly steady. No cover. We go in low and fast, we'll be on them before their gunners can even traverse. One pass. One pass. The words hang in the cold air. Miles feels a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He glances again at the sleek profile of Riley's P-51, a magnificent machine, the thoroughbred of the skies. With its laminar flow wings and supercharged Merlin engine, it could climb like a rocket and outrun anything the Luftwaffe had at high altitude. But for ground attack, it was a glass cannon. You see, the source of its power was also its greatest weakness, its liquid cooling system. A complex network of pipes carried a vital mixture of glycol and water from the roaring engine to a large, vulnerable radiator housed in a distinctive scoop right under the plane's belly. It was the Mustang's Achilles heel. Miles thinks of the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the Jug. That plane was a beast, built like a flying tank. Its massive air-cooled radial engine could absorb an unbelievable amount of punishment. Pilots came back with entire cylinders shot away, lines severed, gaping holes in the fuselage, and the engine would somehow keep running. You could fly a Jug through a brick wall and come out the other side. But the Mustang? One stray bullet from a common Mauser rifle, one lucky piece of shrapnel kicked up from the ground, could pierce that delicate radiator. The glycol would vent in a cloud of white smoke, the engine temperature would spike into the red in under a minute, and the Merlin would seize into a solid block of useless metal. The Mustang would become a 9,000-pound glider with the flight characteristics of a dropped anvil. Flying low in a P-51 wasn't just risky, it was a violation of the laws of survival. "The whole valley's a flak trap, Riley," Miles pleads, trying to reason with him. "Respectfully, sir, they'll be looking up. I'm not going to be up." Before Miles can process the chilling implication of those words, Riley's P-51 peels away. But he doesn't execute a shallow, controlled dive. He rolls over, points his nose straight at the earth, and drops like a stone. It's not a strafing run, it's a vertical dive. A dive from 8,000 feet aimed at a target barely 1,000 feet off the ground. The polished silver of his aircraft shrinks in an instant, a silver dart hurtling toward the green canopy. Miles's blood runs cold. He stares at the horrifying spectacle, his mind screaming. What is he doing? He's compressing. The controls will stiffen. He won't be able to pull out. The G-forces will crush him. He's going too fast, too steep. He's not aiming for the convoy. He's aiming for the damn road itself. "Pull up, Riley. For God's sake, pull up." The scream is torn from his throat, a raw, desperate command lost in the roar of his own engine. "You're going to hit the trees. Pull up." The other two pilots in the flight watch in stunned silence. On the radio, there is only the sound of heavy breathing and the piercing shriek of wind over an open microphone from Riley's plane. The P-51 plummets, a silver crucifix against the dark earth, getting smaller and smaller, faster and faster. It disappears behind the ridgeline, swallowed by the forest. Then, there is nothing, just the hiss of the radio. A dead, suffocating silence hangs in the air. Miles waits for the inevitable bloom of orange flame, the column of black smoke. He'd just send his man to his death.
Inside the cockpit of Viper 3, the world ceases to exist beyond the circular frame of the gun sight. There is no up or down, only a rapidly expanding vortex of green and gray. The roar of the Merlin engine at full throttle is a physical blow, a continuous explosion happening just feet in front of him. But it's drowned out by a sound even more terrifying. The high-pitched banshee scream of the airframe itself, protesting its violent descent. At over 400 miles per hour, the P-51 is no longer flying. It is falling under power, a guided missile with a man strapped inside. Lieutenant Jack Riley is not panicking. His mind is a place of cold, serene calculation. Every sensation is an input, every vibration a piece of data. The G-forces are immense, trying to pull the blood from his brain and push him down through the floor of the aircraft. He fights it, tensing every muscle in his body, grunting with the strain. His vision begins to tunnel, the edges turning gray. But he doesn't care. The only thing that matters is the patch of asphalt at the center of his world. This is his element. Other pilots feared the ground. They saw it as the enemy, the unforgiving end to every mistake. But Riley had spent his youth flying crop dusters and racing planes just feet above the cornfields of Ohio. He understood the ground. He understood the compressed cushion of air that built up beneath the wings, the tricky currents that swirled around trees and hills. He knew how an aircraft behaved when it was on the absolute knife edge of its performance envelope, a place where the air was thick and every control input was magnified tenfold. The dive is a controlled chaos. He isn't just letting the plane fall. He is flying it, wrestling with it. He feeds in right rudder, countering the massive engine torque that's trying to twist the Mustang onto its back. His left hand is a blur on the trim wheels, constantly adjusting, neutralizing the immense pressures building on the elevators and ailerons.
The stick feels like it's set in concrete, but he uses small, precise pressures, anticipating the plane's violent reactions. The whole machine shudders, a vibration that starts in the wing roots and travels up the stick into his bones. His teeth ache from the rattling. The trees are no longer individual shapes, but a solid green wall rushing up to meet him. Captain Miles' frantic shouts are a distant, meaningless squawk in his headset. He is far beyond orders now. The altimeter is a spinning blur. 500 feet, 300, 100. The German soldiers in the back of an Opel Blitz truck look up from their cigarettes, their faces a mixture of confusion and idle curiosity, a look that morphs into sheer, pants-wetting terror as they realize the screaming sound in the sky is not a distant artillery shell, but a 4-ton fighter plane aimed directly at their heads. He doesn't pull back on the stick. That would be suicide. A high G pull-up at this speed would stall the wings and smash him into the trees on the far side of the valley. Instead, at the last possible second, with his propeller just yards from the ground, he does the impossible. He kicks the rudder hard left and applies opposite aileron, skidding the P-51 sideways out of the dive. The plane groans in protest, the wings flexing under the strain. He levels out. Not at 50 feet, not at 20. His wingtips are slicing through the top branches of the roadside pines. His propeller is a whirling disc of death mere inches from the blacktop. He is flying in the valley, a silver ghost moving at over 6 miles a minute, trapped between the road and the low-hanging branches. And there it is, laid out before him like a string of beads, the entire convoy. He sees it all in a single adrenaline-soaked snapshot: the lead motorcycle, the command car, troop carriers, and then the prizes: a canvas-covered truck with ammunition markings, a tanker truck, likely full of high-octane gasoline. He has maybe 3 seconds of firing time before he overruns the entire column. His thumb finds the small red button on the top of his control stick. The first truck, a big man diesel, fills his entire windscreen. His driver's ace is a white screaming mask. Riley's thumb depresses the button.
The world erupts in a cataclysm of sound and violence. The eruption of the P-51's 6 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns is not the clean, crisp sound you hear in movies. It is a deafening, soul-shaking concussion, a physical force that slams into Riley's chest and makes the entire airframe shudder as if it's being torn apart. It's the sound of a mechanical monster clearing its throat, unleashing a torrent of 4,500 rounds per minute. A solid stream of armor-piercing incendiary tracers lances out from the wings, a glowing, white-hot buzzsaw that reaches across the tiny gap between the Mustang and its prey. The windshield of the lead truck doesn't shatter, it simply ceases to exist. The driver and the engine block behind him are vaporized in a cloud of red mist and shredded metal. Riley doesn't waver. He keeps his thumb pressed down, his eyes fixed on the next target. He is no longer flying a plane, he is aiming a weapon of impossible power, and his entire body is part of the firing mechanism. He walks the stream of fire from the disintegrating lead vehicle onto the Opel Blitz troop carrier behind it. The 50 caliber rounds, each the size of a man's thumb, tear through the thin metal and canvas as if it were paper. For a horrifying split second, he sees the bodies of the soldiers inside thrown about like rag dolls before the truck's fuel tank ignites. A bloom of orange flame washes over his canopy, and he flies straight through it. The heat is intense, a physical wave. He ignores it. Next in line is the ammunition truck. The first rounds punch through the wooden sideboards. There is a flicker, then a catastrophic, blinding white detonation that lifts the entire truck into the air. The explosion is so powerful it rocks his Mustang, a violent upward shove that threatens to smash him into the overhead trees. He instinctively shoves the stick forward, forcing the plane back down, his propeller almost scraping the crater that was just created. He flies through a storm of his own making, a blizzard of shrapnel, wood splinters, and twisted metal. Pieces of debris ping and clang against the belly of his plane and the armored glass of his windscreen. He sees a truck tire cartwheel cast his canopy. He holds the trigger down. The fuel tanker is next. The incendiary rounds stitch a perfect line across its steel tank. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the tanker seems to swell, and it erupts in a roiling, liquid fireball that expands outward, engulfing the 2 trucks behind it in a hellish inferno. The road becomes a river of burning fuel. Imagine you are a German soldier huddled in the 6th truck. You hear a sound unlike any you have ever heard, a Schäli the Genschashan, and then the world in front of you simply vanishes in thunder and fire. The sound doesn't precede the destruction, it arrives with it. It is the apocalypse arriving at 400 miles per hour. You don't even have time to scream.
Riley keeps his finger on the trigger. He is a specter of vengeance, a silver demon skimming the asphalt. Trucks 7, 8, 9, they all disintegrate under the onslaught. 10, 11. The 12th and final truck, a field kitchen, vanishes in a cloud of pots, pans, and steam as the boiler explodes. He has flown the length of a mile-long convoy, and his thumb has not left the button once. Ahead, the road is clear. He is out of targets. The entire convoy is a single, continuous ribbon of flame, black smoke, and secondary explosions. He finally pulls back on the stick. The P-51 responds instantly, clawing for the sky in a gut-wrenching, high-G climb. He clears the trees by scant feet, the ground dropping away beneath him. As he banks, he catches a glimpse of his handiwork. It's not a road anymore. It is a black, burning scar carved into the forest, a funeral pyre for 50 men and a dozen vehicles. He also sees something else, a small, jagged hole neatly punched through the leading edge of his left wing, and trailing from it, a thin, almost invisible wisp of vapor.
The sudden silence in the cockpit is deafening. With his finger off the trigger, the only sounds are the steady roar of the Merlin and the frantic, disbelieving shouts exploding over the radio. Jesus Christ, did you see that? He's alive! Viper 3 is climbing! I don't believe it. I do not believe what I just saw. Captain Evan Miles's voice cuts through the cacophony, a mixture of raw fury and profound relief. Viper 3, report. Report your status, damn it. Are you hit? Jack Riley's heart hammers against his ribs, so hard he can feel it in his throat. His hands, which had been so steady just moments before, now tremble with the delayed shock of adrenaline. He forces a deep breath of cold, metallic-tasting oxygen into his lungs. He scans his instrument panel. Oil pressure, steady. Coolant temperature, in the green. The engine is running as smooth as a sewing machine. The wisp of vapor from the wing wasn't glycol, it was fuel, venting from a ruptured but non-critical tank. He was lucky. Impossibly, miraculously lucky. Viper 3 is green, he transmits, his own voice sounding distant and strange. Minor damage to the left wing. Controls are responsive. He circles once, a victor, surveying his conquest. Below, the scene is one of complete and utter devastation. The fire is so intense it creates its own weather system, a towering column of oily black smoke that punctures through the low cloud layer and marks the spot for miles around. Secondary explosions continue to pop and flash within the inferno, ammunition cooking off, fuel tanks rupturing. He has not just damaged a convoy, he has erased it from existence. The supplies in those trucks, the fuel, the ammunition, the winter gear, were destined for a German infantry regiment dug into the frozen mud of the Hurtgen. Because of what he just did, those soldiers would not get their resupply. A German counterattack would stall before it began. Positions would be overrun. Men on his side, American GIs shivering in foxholes just a few miles away, would live to see another sunrise because of the 3 seconds he held his thumb on a button. The flight back to Leiston is subdued. The adrenaline leaches away, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and the cold, stark realization of the odds he justified. He flew into the jaws of death and spit in its eye. He thinks of the German faces he saw, the terror in their eyes in the split second before they were annihilated. There is no elation, only a grim, hollow sense of finality. He did his job. Hours later, on the cold, windswept hardstand in England, the ground crew swarms his P-51, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. They point to the grass stains on the propeller tips. They run their hands over the scorch marks and dents on the plane's belly, where shrapnel from the exploding trucks had hit. They stare at the single neat .50 caliber hole in the wing, likely from a round cooking off in one of the trucks he destroyed. Captain Miles walks over, his face unreadable. He stands beside Riley, both men looking at the ticking, cooling machine that had justified every law of combat aviation. Miles doesn't yell. He doesn't start a court-martial proceeding. He simply reaches out and touches the bottom of the big radiator scoop under the Mustang's nose. It is scraped and dented, but miraculously unbreached. He looks from the radiator to Riley's young, tired face. "They called it suicide," Miles says, his voice barely a whisper above the wind. "Reckless. Impossible." He shakes his head slowly, a long, weary motion. He doesn't congratulate him. He doesn't praise his skill. He just looks him dead in the eye and gives him the only order that now matters. "Don't you ever do that again, Lieutenant." Riley just nods. He knows. They both know. A line had been crossed.
A legend had been forged in a torrent of fire and steel, a story that would be told in hushed, reverent tones in every smoky briefing room and officers' club until the war was won. It was a single, insane act of defiance that should have ended in a fireball, but instead ended a battle before it ever began.